Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of I See You. I have some fun updates, some cool stories to share with you, and then we're going to dive into the topic of hydration. And the reason I wanted to cover this topic was because I just went to two concerts in 1 week and I did not have to pee during either show. And this these concerts were an absolutely incredible experience. First of all, I got to see the Jonas Brothers and I snuck into the front row in Nashville. I went to this concert by myself and I had the best night of my life. I don't know what that says about me. Maybe I haven't had that great of days yet, but it was so incredible. I have been obsessed with the Jonas Brothers since I was in middle school. And I went to two concerts on their tour already that were local to me. And I had a conference in Nashville last week. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to send it. I'm going to go solo. And it was the best decision I've ever made. So, little backstory. I waited until the last second to buy a ticket just to see if the prices would drop. And they did. I got a floor seat for $250 the day before the concert, which in this economy, absolutely incredible. That ticket was worth at least $700. And somehow I got it. So dumb luck, I don't know. So I go to my seat and it was between two groups of people. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna wait until I absolutely have to go sit in my seat because I don't want to be smushed and not everybody is here yet. So I sit, I'm on the floor to if you're looking at the stage, like the left of the catwalk, I'm in the 13th row. And that's kind of like next to the side of the catwalk. So the opening act starts. It's actually their brother, Frankie Jonas, and people start running up to like the railing, like the barricade where, people lean while the person performs. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go. So I'm at this barricade and having the best time ever. So close, like literally 5 feet away from the stage. It was absolutely wild. And then they transition into the second opening act, which was the All American Rejects. And if you know me, you know that I'm also obsessed with them. So I was living my life and I figured, at some point someone's going to make me sit down in my seat. They're going to call me out. So after the All American Rejects were done, the security guard comes by and is like, hey, if you don't have a wristband, you can't stand at the railing. And I was like, oh, okay, who gets a wristband? And he said people in seats 1 or 2 of each row. Now I was in seat 8 of my row, but I decided to take a chance because the girl next to me at the railing actually had seat 1 in her row and she didn't get a wristband. So the guy went to go get her wristband. And I was thinking very quickly and I screenshotted my ticket. I went into Canva. If you guys are unfamiliar, Canva is like a graphic design app where you can make edits, you can do whatever you need. That's how I make like my Instagram posts and things like that. So I went in and I edited my ticket number or my seat number to say 1 instead of 8. So when this guy came back, I showed him my ticket and he gave me a wristband. And yes, it was a lie, but I stand by it because I was 5 feet away from Joe Jonas, who is my number one celebrity crush. And it was absolutely incredible. I had these cowboy boots on. I was dancing the whole night. And I will say, if you've never been to a concert by yourself, 10 out of 10 recommend because you can dance as crazy as you want and not worry about anybody judging you because you don't know anybody there. If you're someone like me who cares what other people think about you normally. So that was great. And then last night, so I'm recording this on a Wednesday, I went to Philadelphia with a couple of my friends and we went to see Aly and AJ. So if you grew up in like the early 2000s, if you're a millennial, Aly and AJ, they were this duo that was pretty big on Disney Channel and they were absolutely incredible. They sang the song, Potential Breakup Song. lot of bangers. So we went to that concert, and that was general admission only. So it was kind of like you're standing the whole time in like a pit. There's no assigned seats. So both of these concerts were moments where I reflected and I was like, thank God I don't have bladder symptoms anymore. I'm so grateful that I pee a normal amount. I don't struggle with OAB, like the frequency and urgency anymore, because 10 years ago, I'd spend half of the concert standing in line for the bathroom. And then you have to, if you're in like the general admission area, you have to fight your way back to wherever your friends are. So I also want to say at the Jonas Brothers concert, I was fully prepared to pee my pants if it came to that. But luckily it did not. I decided that this was so important to me that I cut off fluids about an hour before the concert. I actually bought a water bottle when I went in, but when I was at the barricade and I realized like I need to stay here if I want to be here for the rest of the night, I was like, okay, I'm gonna really take my time on this and wait until maybe the second half of the show, because I simply did not want to risk any time away from these Jonas Brothers. So same thing for the Aly and AJ concert. I cut my fluids off about an hour ahead of time, and I drank a water bottle inside during the concert, and I didn't have any crazy urges. I went when I got home. And I know a lot of you are struggling with the thought of going an hour plus without having to pee or without mapping, where is the nearest bathroom. It's a lot of mental gymnastics. I know, because I was there once, and I want you to realize that there is another side to this. You can overcome this. It's going to take some work, but you can. There is a life for you where you're not constantly mapping out the bathrooms and you're not constantly aware of your bladder. So that being said, I really wanted to talk to you guys today about hydration, because it's not a topic that I have done an episode on before. And I'm sure a lot of you have Googled from time to time, like, how much water should I be drinking? Or maybe you had the thought, like, I pee so much, I'm just going to restrict my fluids. And hopefully that means I'm going to pee less. Spoiler alert, that is unfortunately not how things work. That actually can backfire on you, but we will get into that. So I really want to educate you guys on how your body works, how when you drink water, like what happens to it, how it helps your body, why it's so important, and give you practical tips for staying hydrated in your day-to-day life. So let's get into it. And first, I'm going to just be honest with you. We're going to get into some science here. We're going to magic school bus the shit out of you for a minute. And I don't know if only millennials will understand that reference, but if you don't get it, do the Google. Magic school bus. Okay. So what happens when you drink water? Well, when you take a sip, the water travels down your esophagus into your stomach. Then it makes its way into your small intestine, where it's absorbed into your bloodstream. From there, it gets distributed everywhere. Your cells, your brain, your joints, your organs. Basically, hydration is how your body stays alive, calm, and functioning. Okay, TV timeout. I'm going to cue you at multiple points through this episode to take a sip of water. So I'm going to do that with you. With me today, I have my brand new Owala water bottle. I've never had an Owala before, but I got this at an event in Nashville hosted by Taco Bell. So I literally have a water bottle with a Taco Bell logo on it, and I love it. And I kind of really like the Owala because it has like this straw function, but it's not really a straw. So if you are able to, be safe. If you're driving, be careful. Take a sip with me, and then we'll continue. All right. About 60% of your body is made up of water. It plays a role in keeping all of your body systems working well. Staying well hydrated can help reduce your risk of developing kidney stones, urinary tract infections, and constipation. You lose water throughout the day with normal body processes such as making urine, having bowel movements, sweating, and even breathing. Very active individuals can lose more water as you sweat, as the body tries to cool itself down. The same is true at higher altitudes and when you are out in extreme temperatures, like a really hot climate where you're sweating more. Plus, illnesses such as like having a fever or having diarrhea, vomiting, things like that can result in water loss. So that is something to keep in mind. Now, for bladder health, your bladder is lined with something called the GAG layer, GAG. It stands for glycosaminoglycans. This mucosal lining is the bladder's personal security system. When it's intact and hydrated, it keeps irritants out. So your urine contains toxins that your body wants to get rid of. It's a waste product. So we want to maintain a barrier between your bladder and your urine. So that's that little mucosal layer called the GAG layer. When you're dehydrated, that layer gets thinner, less protective. If you think of it like a dry sponge versus a moist sponge. So when your urine is diluted and you're more hydrated, that equals less irritation. Now, when you're dehydrated and your pee is more concentrated, that means it is more acidic, it can be more painful, and it's more likely to bother an already sensitive bladder lining. So in addition to your bladder, hydration also helps your gut function. We love a happy gut around here because constipation equals extra bladder pressure and pelvic floor tension. So that obviously can increase your symptoms. So we really want to make sure that the gut is functioning properly in addition to the bladder. So those are just two main roles of hydration. There's a ton others, but we don't have time for that. We're just going to get into those two functions today. But basically the bottom line is that hydration is so important. How much you drink, when you drink it, and what you're drinking matters a lot more than just checking a "did I drink enough" box. Okay, take a second, take your sip of water. Let's talk about the two hydration extremes. First, we'll talk about what happens when you're dehydrated. When you're dehydrated, that means you're not drinking enough fluids for your body to do what it needs to do. Your urine becomes more concentrated, which means it's more acidic and potentially irritating to your bladder lining if things are already angry down there. Okay. Again, that GAG layer can lose its protective oomph. Okay. You're also more prone to constipation. So if you don't drink enough water, that means your stool is going to be more dry and compact and essentially not how it's supposed to be. You might have to strain to get it out. And that can add to pressure on your bladder or your pelvic area. You also may feel more fatigued, dizzy, or foggy. When I'm dehydrated, my body lets me know. I can never get away with being dehydrated just because I'm such a sensitive person. So if I'm not drinking enough water, my bladder will tell me. I'll get a little bit of like a burn. And I know that that's like the first sign for me of like, you got to start drinking. I also, more on like the long-term side, like maybe if I go like 1 to 2 days without enough hydration for my body, I can get constipated. And if it's really bad, like when I know I'm like, okay, this is entering the not good side of hydration, I will get a headache and I'll just feel overall, my whole body will feel like crap. So that's what it feels like for me. For other people, for you, it might be different. So on the other hand, on the other side of the spectrum, when you're overhydrated, you're drinking too much water, you might constantly be peeing, and you might be peeing a pretty large volume. Okay, your urine might be really clear, meaning it's very diluted. When you're constantly peeing, you might stretch out or fatigue your bladder muscles. You're also flushing out important electrolytes and minerals that your body actually needs to function. And you also may trigger urgency or frequency simply from the pressure of all of that extra volume. So more water is not always better. Okay, this is something that it's going to be super personalized to you. Okay, let's take another sip of our water. There is no magic number or recommendation for everyone, but I can give you a framework here. So fluid needs are going to vary. Factors like your age, sex, activity level, climate, and overall health are going to impact how much water that you should be drinking each day. So if you're someone that does like CrossFit and you're sweating a ton and you're doing really heavy exercise, that means your fluid needs may go up. If you're on certain medications that cause a diuretic effect or just cause you to lose more fluid in your body, you might need more water. On the flip side, there's some medications where maybe you need to watch your fluid intake. If you are at like a high altitude, I know when I went to Colorado, I knew I needed to hydrate a little bit more than I normally did. If you have certain health conditions like congestive heart failure, kidney issues, infections, or diarrhea, you may need more or less fluids. Generally, women need about 11.5 cups of total water per day, and men about 15.5 cups. I'm so sorry for anybody outside of the US. I don't know the conversion there, but you can easily convert that in Google if you need to. But these numbers include water from food, which accounts for about 20% of your intake. So when we boil that down, pun intended, most women need about 9 cups of fluid per day, and men are more around 13 cups. Again, these are general recommendations, not hard rules. These are especially not for people with certain conditions or sensitive bladders. Okay. I like just generally, I like the recommendation of take your weight in pounds and divide it by 2. And that's the amount of ounces that you need per day. I think that's, a solid, like, generalized guideline. But again, everyone is different. In terms of fluids that are going to support your hydration, things like filtered or spring water, herbal teas like marshmallow root, chamomile, lavender, I'm trying to think, peppermint I like, but some people have noted that doesn't agree with them, so it's definitely different from person to person. Coconut water that is unsweetened and like the only ingredient on the label is just coconut water, that can be another hydrating beverage that you can have. And then if you need some variety, you could try some like bone broth. That's just another option for you. I know sometimes it gets boring to just drink water. Fluids that might be irritating for some people, you guys have all heard these before: the sparkling water, the artificially sweetened beverages or beverages with lots of added sugars in them, the flavored electrolyte drinks. These can be bothersome for some. And if you listen to this podcast a lot or you follow me on social media, you know that I am not pro restriction. I'm pro knowing what your triggers are, if you have any, and taking it from there. So if you know for a fact, like you've tested it and you know that carbonated beverages bother you, okay, let's keep those out for a bit and let's replace it with maybe some herbal tea. This isn't going to be forever, okay? This is something that you can overcome, like the food and beverage sensitivities. If you want to learn more on that, go listen to episode 97 of this podcast for more. But you also don't want to forget your water-rich food sources. So things like cucumbers, watermelons, strawberries, if you can tolerate them. Your fruits and veggies, honestly, are great sources of fluids. Lettuce, soups, things like that, they can help you meet your hydration goals. So again, this is going to vary from person to person. Nutrition is so individualized that, you really need to evaluate, okay, what's best for me and what's best for my lifestyle. And if you need help, reach out to me, reach out to another registered dietitian. We can help you determine your fluid needs. Okay, take another sip of your water. So another hot topic in the hydration space is whether or not you need electrolytes in your water. So I'm sure you've seen the products like the Liquid IV and the like LMNT. There's like a million different brands now for these hydration powders that you can put in your water, or there's beverages that already come with electrolytes. Like there's a lot of like influencing happening around electrolytes right now. So when we say electrolytes, the main ones are sodium, potassium, magnesium, and chloride. These help your body absorb and use water properly. So if you're drinking a ton of water and you're still feeling thirsty, dizzy, or weak, it might be an electrolyte imbalance issue. Also, please talk to your doctor about this before trying anything new, any sort of hydration powders or anything like that, just in case. I think it's always good to have that second set of eyes on it. But a brand of electrolyte, or I think they call it a hydration powder, that I partnered with in the past is called Enact Hydration. They're actually a business that's local to me in Pennsylvania, and they sent me some, and it tastes like nothing. It's not flavored, so it's great for someone who maybe you don't know if you're sensitive to certain ingredients. It's something that is awesome. So I'll link that in the show notes. Yeah, I think that's the main one that I really like, and that's something that I have tried personally. I also, on occasion, will drink Liquid IV simply because I like the taste of the firecracker flavor. It reminds me of those red, white, and blue popsicles, so it's kind of just like a nostalgic feeling for me. So that's going to have a lot of extra flavorings and ingredients, and if your bladder is kind of sensitive, it may not be best for you. But hopefully that gives you hope that if you can't tolerate something like that right now, maybe you can down the line, because before, things like this used to bother my bladder. Also, coconut water does contain some electrolytes, so that's another thing that you can try. But also, like, go slow with this stuff. More isn't always better, but we really want to focus on working with our body instead of against it. All right, take another sip. All right, let's talk about how to check in with your body. How do you evaluate if you are hydrated or dehydrated? The first thing I really like people to pay attention to is the color of their urine. So I don't know, I'm sure everyone has heard this at some point, but I think the first time I was taught this was in elementary school. When we pee, we want the color of our pee to be more of a pale yellow, more like lemonade. So that means you're pretty hydrated. We don't want it to be totally clear because that is a sign of overhydration. You want it to just have a little bit of yellow in it. If it gets to be dark yellow, that is a sign that you are becoming more dehydrated. So it's something like apple juice. If we're to put a drink to the color. So lemonade versus apple juice, we want to be more towards lemonade. I feel like that example always stuck with me, so I'm gonna give that one to you guys. So you can check your pee color. This may not be super effective if you have a lot of frequency and you're going very frequently and it's only a couple of drops. It might not be the best measure. You could always pay attention to your urine volume also. So pay attention to patterns of, okay, let's count. You can measure your urine with they call it a hat, or like a urine collection device. You can get it at your local drugstore or on Amazon. It literally just like goes in your toilet and you pee into it and it measures for you. So you can measure the amount. You can also count in seconds, like 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, and you can kind of estimate that that's equal, like 1 second is equal to 1 ounce, but that's not going to be like super accurate, which is why measuring is probably best. But getting a good idea of how much volume that you're producing can be helpful, and then paying attention to like how much water and fluids you're consuming and the effect that that has on your urine output. So paying attention to what goes in versus what comes out. Okay. Pay attention to your thirst cues as well. So if you rarely feel thirsty, that can mean a couple of things. That could be, you're used to overriding your body's cues. Maybe you're like me and you have a gum addiction and you're just always chewing gum, and that kind of screws with the thirst cues in your body. Maybe you just get really distracted and simply don't think about drinking water. So if you're thirsty, drink. But the thing is, you really don't want to chug. Chugging is not going to be helpful because it's putting a larger volume in your body, and it's going to be digested, and then it's going to be produced into urine, and it might make you have to pee sooner and more urgently. So we want to sip as frequently as possible. Speaking of, take another sip. We also want to track patterns. So looking at hydration alongside of your flare days. So if you flare, let's look back and think about, okay, was I hydrated that day? Was I hydrated the day before? Is there any sort of correlation here? What about bowel movements? Did you flare because maybe you were constipated? Is it related to that? Were you stressed? Were you on your period? Was there a certain food? It's all connected. So we want to be cognizant, but not too hyper fixated on it. There's like a happy medium that you have to find. And just don't forget, fluid needs vary. So what works for your best friend or for your husband or wife or partner, what works for them isn't necessarily going to be what works for you. So the goal here is not to micromanage every sip. It's to just build awareness and trust within your body. We really want to build up or create a new routine for you where we're being as consistent as possible. And that kind of takes us into the next section of tips for hydrating. Before we do it, we're going to take another sip. So with these, you can take them or leave them. I'm just going to drop some tips here that could be helpful for you if you need to work more hydration into your day. So something that I find really helps me before I have my morning cup of coffee, and if you have any caffeine in the morning, this is something I definitely recommend doing. If you don't have caffeine, still start your day with a few sips of water. So before you hit the coffee or whatever it is you're drinking, drink a few sips of water, maybe sip 8 ounces of water over a period of 30 to 45 minutes before going to your caffeinated beverages. Also, when you're consuming things that are diuretics, so caffeine and alcohol, I like to do a hydration sandwich. So drink some water beforehand. If you drink your coffee, you're sipping on that. Afterwards, drink another 8 ounces of water over 30 to 45 minutes. Okay, that kind of helps to maintain hydration because those beverages are going to cause your body to pee more. This is just a normal thing that happens in everyone's body. What else do I want to tell you guys? So if you're finding that you wake up in the middle of the night to pee a lot and you haven't experimented with cutting off your fluids maybe an hour or two before bed, that could be worth experimenting with. For some people, it's not going to make a difference, especially if your nervous system is really dysfunctional. That could be one of the reasons you're waking up throughout the night. So that could be something to experiment with. Next is sip consistently. We've mentioned this a lot. Don't chug, or at least try to minimize the amount of chugging you're doing. We don't want you going like 2 hours without water and then just chugging like 16 to 20 ounces and then going another 2 hours without water. And that being said, I know there are some jobs out there that it's really difficult. I know nurses, this can be difficult to have water like at your station if you're in a hospital. Sometimes it's difficult for teachers to drink. So just do your best. I remember back when I was in high school, I had to get like a special doctor's note that said, Callie can have water with her during class because that was a school policy. You couldn't have water during class. Which, side note, I wonder how many other people in my school ended up with some bladder issues, because how can we hydrate if we only have a chance between classes to drink a little bit at a water fountain? I digress. Herbal teas and foods can count towards hydration. Okay, we're counting those things. We're counting if you have like milk or something like that. If it's a fluid or if it's a food that contains fluid, yeah, we're going to count that in. Another tip, carry a refillable water bottle. So whatever works for you. I have it right here, Stanley, that I actually love Stanleys. I mean, yes, they're overpriced and they do have knockoffs, so like do what you want with that. I got this with a gift card. So I like the Stanley because it travels well. It fits in my cup holder in my car. I love that. Versus my Owala, which does not. That is one of my biggest qualms that I have with my new Owala. There's lots of water bottles out there. There's bigger ones. There's ones that have like little messages on the side or like a schedule on the side. Honestly, whatever works best for you. If you like having a straw, have a straw. If you like having a lid, have a lid. If you need to have a cup, have a cup. Just be careful. If you have cats, be careful. They might knock that shit over. So, yeah. With a lot of this, it's like whatever works best for you. You can also flavor your water naturally. You could try some like cucumber, if you can tolerate lemon or lime, maybe some herbs like mint. You could try that out for some flavor. And then I already kind of mentioned this, but eat more water-rich foods, fruits, veggies, things like that. Little shifts can make a really big difference. So to wrap all of this up, whatever you're drinking each day, you are doing a fantastic job. But if you are struggling with, like, if you have dark urine, if you have a lot of frequency, urgency, pain, this might be something to pay attention to. Because a lot of people, when they think, okay, I want to pee less, I'm going to drink less, that backfires a lot of the time, because if your urine is more concentrated, it can aggravate a bladder wall that is inflamed or irritated. So we really want to make sure that we are staying hydrated. But again, we want that happy medium where we're not overhydrating. I've worked with so many people now, and it's always, I can never predict what people are going to tell me when I ask how much water they have per day. It ranges from like 20 ounces to like 120 ounces. It's never predictable. But if you're someone who's on the lower end, like if you're drinking less than about 64 ounces per day, I would try to use some of these tips here and increase your hydration, but do it slowly. Baby step the shit out of this. Okay, we don't want to like make any major changes and your body just kind of is like, what's happening? I'm going to throw more symptoms at you. We want to just kind of slowly but surely maybe add in an extra couple ounces each week and start layering on from there and just see what happens. Okay. We don't want hydration to feel stressful. We do not want to add more stress to you or your life, but I will say, give it a chance. Your body has needs and hydration is super important. I already explained everything that it does, but like we can't survive as humans without hydration. So this is really an important topic for us to talk about. So if you have any questions on hydration, feel free to reach out to me on social media. If you are struggling to get relief from your bladder symptoms, I did launch a couple weeks ago a new free masterclass on how to find the root cause of your bladder symptoms. So I will link that in the show notes. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode, and thanks so much for listening.